This is chapter 33, video number 2. This one is on contractionary fiscal policy. So in the last video, we talked about what happens if a country goes into recession and the government needs to step in and have a stimulus package. In this one, we'll talk about what happens if the economy is in the situation on the board behind me. As you can see here, the equilibrium that they're at is way above full employment equilibrium. They've already suffered some inflation, and they could suffer significantly more inflation as input prices rise and other prices begin to rise, and we get back to full employment level of income and output in the economy at a much, much higher price level. This could be very bad inflation situation. So interventionist economic theory, what we call neo-Keynesian economic theory, would say that the government can now step in and do what we call contractionary fiscal policy to stem inflation and bring the AD curve back to a reasonable place where we have a reasonable price level, or we try to eliminate any more inflation and get back to a healthy full employment output. How would the government do that? By taking money out of the economy somehow. And they would do that by doing one of two things. They would either cut spending or they would increase taxes and simply tax it away from individuals and businesses. So in this kind of inflationary mess, in a time of inflation, we need contractionary fiscal policy. And so contractionary fiscal policy is to reduce government spending or increase the taxes or combination of both. Combination of reducing government spending and increasing taxes together. This really does happen at times. When we got into a really bad inflation in the late 1970s, right around 1980 and 81, the government was trying very hard to not have big deficits, to try to cut spending programs. That was under President Ronald Reagan. Significant number of government cuts were made at that time. Now, he wanted to reduce taxes, which is an interesting thing during an inflationary period. He wanted to try to expand aggregate supply. And we'll talk more about what they call supply side economics a little later on. That was the attempt in the early 1980s under President Reagan. But the bottom line is there was a lot of government spending cuts at that time. And an increase in taxes would do the same thing. So that's contractionary fiscal policy. Now, before this video is over, a brief comment on, like I said in the first video, I would talk about should the government step in to adjust the economy this way. This is called intervention, government intervention. And a lot of economists believe that the government should intervene in these times, that the study of economics has developed a lot of tools that the government can use to step in and manage the economy. And when we have severe recessions, the government knows what tools it can use to bring us out of the recession. And when we have inflation, the government knows what tools it has to bring us out of the inflation. So there's another group of economists that believe that all this tinkering and intervention in the economy just makes things worse. The example that I always give about that is, have you ever been in a pool, a backyard pool at your well, maybe you have one, or your neighbor's house or something, and there are times when it's fun. And I remember when I was a kid, we had a pool in my backyard. We'd take our rafts and we'd jump up and down on them in the water, and we get the waves going really big and high and crashing over the edge of the coping stone onto the deck beside the pool, and we thought that was real funny. And my dad came out and yelled at us for it. So we thought, well, if we can make the waves, maybe we can calm them down. Maybe every time a wave comes by, we can use our mattress or our floaty to try to tamp it down a little bit. And the more you try to tamp it down, the worse it gets, frankly. You just can't tamp it down. So non-interventionist, what we call monetarist school of economics, it's kind of a neoclassical school of economics, is non-interventionist. And they believe that the more that the government tinkers and tries to engage in active fiscal policy, the more they're just going to make things worse, that we need to just let the economy go through its paces and naturally resolve back to full employment. That's a minority view at this point. Like I was saying in an earlier video, it could take a year or 2 years for things to resolve, prices to adjust, and to get back to that full employment in the modern world. The majority, and that's why they call it mainstream economic theory right now, is that there should be government intervention, and that's why Congress is currently thinking about a stimulus package to try to help us out of the recession. So that's we've now covered expansionary fiscal policy and contractionary, and it's really simple. It's fiscal policy is the tools of the government, the taxation and spending tools of the government, and contractionary policy is only used in inflationary times, reduce government spending or increase taxes. We had on the board previously that in a recession you would use expansionary fiscal policy, which would be the opposite, an increase in government spending or a reduction in taxes or a combination of those two. In the next video, I'm going to talk about something called the tax multiplier and the balanced budget multiplier. That'll be next.